Transformative Principle, episode 73 with Brendan Hufford. I'm really excited about this interview today because Brendan shares my philosophy about college, and we're going to talk a little bit about how college is horribly overpriced, and it's one of those things that I really enjoy talking about because I think college is great. But at the same time, I think we put too much emphasis on going to some fancy, expensive college when really we just need that degree most of the time. And besides that, it's just incredibly expensive to do anything in college. So anyway, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about his school in Gary, Indiana. That is the only successful school in Gary, Indiana. Great interview here, and I hope you enjoy it. I'd also like to thank our sponsor for this episode, Simple School Sites. Please go to jethrojones.com/simpleschoolsites and sign up to be notified when this is released. It's going to be a different way of doing websites for schools that make them easily customizable, have high social integration, and makes them look so much better than our typical school sites look. So jethrojones.com/simpleschoolsites to sign up. Thank you, Brendan, for agreeing to be a guest on my podcast today. And why don't we start by having you tell us who you are, where you're at, and what you're doing right now.
So my name is Brendan Hufford. I am an assistant principal at Thea Bowman Leadership Academy, which is, like, let's just be real frank, it's the only successful school in Gary, Indiana. Our state ranks us by letter grades because it's a horrible, archaic system that doesn't make sense. But whatever, we almost got an A last year, and it was awesome. And every other school in the city gets Fs. And it's pretty amazing because we don't test the kids to get in. They don't pay to get in. It's the same kids as anybody else. So we're doing a lot of really cool things. And on top of that, on top of being an assistant principal, I'm also heavily involved in my church. I train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at least once or twice a week. And I own a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gi and apparel company called OK Kimonos. And I have a podcast called Entrepreneurs and Coffee. So definitely don't have a lot of extra time on the Google Calendar's quite full.
No kidding. Sounds like it. So I don't know much about Indiana in general. Tell me about why it's special that you're the best school in Gary, Indiana. What challenges you face there that cause everybody else to get Fs?
Well, man, Gary was in the running with Indianapolis decades ago to be the state capital. They had all the steel mills were up here because it was right on the lake, and it was thriving. There's this beautiful, the pictures that I see of this place, it was this beautiful, thriving metropolis. But if it gives you any indication of what Gary looks like now, the scenes in Transformers when the Decepticons are blowing up the city of Chicago, the scenes that were of Chicago in ruins were actually shot in Gary.
Ouch.
And the whole city, like when you see documentaries about like Flint, Michigan, what happened after like the industry left, well, that same thing happened in Gary. Some mills closed and it just fell apart. And this poor city is just, at least in part, it's in ruin, and it's such a shame because the people who live there are beautiful, and I care about them deeply, and I'm passionate about serving them. So it's the only school I've ever worked at. I remember when I got my administrative degree, my boss at the time told me, like, let me know before you leave. Mm-hmm. Like, you're a really good teacher, but like now you have this degree, just like give me a heads up. Don't just leave me hanging. I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. She's like, oh, okay. I'm like, I'm serious. I'm not going anywhere. And I didn't, because it's kind of how I'm wired. Like, I just stick with things. And like I said, I care deeply about them. But, the city was the murder capital of the United States for a long time, just because it's so small. So per capita, a lot of people were dying. It's obviously in total way less than a lot of other places, but there's a lot of violence and a lot of other issues that go along with stuff like that. People it's like a culture of scarcity and of desperation. And what I love is that my school is able to show that like these kids can achieve just like anybody else. They're the exact same. You just have to give them certain situations and certain opportunities and stuff, and they can achieve just like any other students.
Yeah.
I just think they get a bad rap a lot.
Yeah, and I think a lot of kids do get a bad rap a lot. We often deal with kids that have the deck stacked against them, and when we can have someone like you who's committed and focused on helping them be successful, then they can do amazing things. What are some of the things that you guys do to help those kids be successful?
So I think it's a lot of things. I think it's like, for instance, our school is one of the few schools that doesn't have metal detectors, which might be crazy, right? Like there might be a ton of guns in our school. I don't know. We can't tell. There's no metal detectors. They might have knives and guns and all sorts of crap. We have no idea. But the fact that we don't have them, it leads with our trust. We trust you that you don't have these. We trust you that you're not going to bring that into our school. And I think when you lead with that trust, people tend to reciprocate. I think it's part of human nature that they just want to give back by being responsible and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So one of the other sides of that coin is, we'll trust you until you do something wrong, and then we're not going to trust you anymore. And it doesn't sound like you have that. It sounds, your phrase that, yeah, we could have tons of guns and knives at our school, but we don't know because we don't have metal detectors. I think that really speaks to the trust that you really genuinely have, that you're not just waiting for them to fail and then you're going to, slap them with some consequence or discipline to make sure they never, have that opportunity again. Talk to me a little bit about that, about how you show that trust to the kids and make sure that they realize that you're for real about it.
You know what? I think, and I'm a young administrator. It's my second year as an assistant principal, and my 8th year at the school. But something that I'm learning as an administrator is that it's not as easy to build relationships with the students as it is when you're a teacher. When I was a teacher, the thing they didn't teach me in school, but the thing that I learned really quickly is that, and I know it's so corny to say, but like the kids don't know how much or they don't care what you know until they know that you care.
Yeah.
And that's said a lot, but man, it's the most true thing ever. Like if you just really give a crap about the students, about the kids, like they'll do their homework, they'll listen to you, they'll stick up for you when other kids are being bad in class, like all sorts of stuff. They'll stick up to when parents are bad mouthing you in the community. Like you just have to give a crap about people. And I think I know it sounds so silly, but when you get frustrated, that's the first thing that goes out the window. And what I think is really strong at our school is that we have a lot of teachers who really give a crap about our kids. They really care. And I don't even remember what your question was, right? but I just feel so strongly that like that's what makes the difference. And it's not like we're going to wait for you to mess up and then we're slamming. And I'm not saying that couldn't happen, right? But the thing is, like, the kids don't feel like they need to bring guns. Most kids bring guns to school not to protect themselves at school, but they would bring them to school to protect themselves on the walk or the drive to or from school.
Yeah.
It's usually not that something's going to go down in the school that I need my gun. It's that getting there and getting home type of thing. Maybe it's I'm crossing through a neighborhood that's not right or something. And well, I don't feel like we have that. I think it also helps just, logistically that we don't have buses because we're a charter school, and that means that everybody has to drive. Mm-hmm. So we don't have a lot of kids walking and things like that. So that might help too, now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. So how big is the area? I mean, could anyone from anywhere in Gary come to your school?
Yeah, anybody from anywhere. Like we have kids coming from Michigan City, which is a solid 30, 40 minutes away. Like kids come from East Chicago, which is another nearby city. Kids come from all over. So it's pretty decentralized. If we We thought about doing buses last year, not just to like run it, just to see what it would look like. And their kids would be sitting on buses for like 2 hours just because it had have to go all over the place to pick up so many random kids that it just wouldn't make any sense for the investment.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Okay. And so because you're a charter school, you guys will take anybody that comes. Are you over enrollment, so you do a lottery, or are you under enrollment, so pretty much everybody who applies gets in? Where are you at with that?
We do a lottery for kindergarten, and then everybody else is just wait list unless we have space.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just come in and you bring in all your paperwork like you're supposed to, and once all your paperwork is in, you're in.
Gotcha. And then I looked at the website, and it's a Catholic charter school, is that right?
So Sister Thea Bowman was a Catholic nun, but we're not associated with the Catholic Church.
Okay, gotcha. So you're just named after
Mm-hmm.
a Catholic nun, not associated.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So one of the things that you do that I find fascinating is that you get up at 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah, man.
What's up
Sure
with that,
do.
dude?
So I don't know, like when I go to bed at night, I'm so excited. I almost don't, sometimes I want to read before I go to bed. And then I just start thinking like, I don't want to read because it's the light, and I don't know. So I don't know how deep we want to go down this rabbit hole, but like the light in front of your eyes, they've shown that like an hour or two of iPad or Kindle light in front of your eyes cuts your sleep quality like in half. It just makes, because now all of a sudden your body and all the hormones in your body are like, dude, you are staring at the sun. It must be daytime. We'll get in daytime kind of nap mode versus being in pitch black, like it's nighttime, deep sleep mode, regenerative recovery sleep. So I don't read at night because I want to go right to sleep, because the sooner I go to sleep is the sooner I can get up in the morning, and then I can work in my business. And I love working. I love business. If I could teach anything, I taught psychology and sociology, and that was the best teaching assignment you could have possibly given me, because it's all about relationships, and it's literally just explaining to kids how the world works. And it's just going, hey, when this happens, that's because of this. And the kids are like, really? That's why my little brother acts like that? Yes.
Yeah.
And they're like, wow, that's so neat. And they go home and tell their little brother, they're like, you're in this stage of development. You're the front of your brain isn't even developed yet. And his little brother's like, you're dumb. And he's like, all right. You're explaining the world to these kids, and they love it. And it gives you a chance to tell a billion stories and ask stories from them. Like, hey, raise your hand. How many of you guys have experienced this? Well, tell me about that. And then they talk to you. You can't really do that in a lot of other subjects. So I love teaching psych and social. But if I could teach anything, again, I would teach business, and I would teach entrepreneurship. And I feel very strongly that the United States, to continue to compete economically in a global scale, we need to start teaching kids to be more entrepreneurial, to have side businesses. I think that, if everybody had a solid side business, I think that would really stimulate our economy. It would do a lot of things with regards to confidence and independence. People would pay their bills a lot easier. This just lends itself so well to a healthy country and a healthy culture. And I just think there's so many people. I think God gives us gifts. He gives us art to make. And your art, my art might be a podcast, and you might be a singer, and somebody else's art might be jujitsu. They might be a martial artist and express their art that way. But we all have this art inside of us that God gives us. And I've been reading this book called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And he talks about this, that we all have this like kind of resistance where we don't express that art. And I think if we taught kids entrepreneurship and gave them that kind of confidence out of the gate, that you're not a slave to your college, you're not a slave to your job after college, you don't have to hate your life. I think that's such a valuable skill, because I think the number one skill a teacher can give a kid, like we always see these studies about how American kids are so overconfident and they're so arrogant, but why don't we teach kids what real confidence is? And I don't think there's a better way to teach a kid real confidence than to do a project with them in an entrepreneurship class where they make real money.
Yeah. So some people would say, well, we just need kids to go to college and get more college, and that's how we're going to stimulate our economy and make things better. That's what, a big, huge push right now in education is.
Ugh.
What's wrong with that idea, and why do you think an entrepreneurial spirit and a successful side business is the way to go?
Okay, so Jethro, remember how like there was a housing bubble
Yep.
not too long ago, and what happened when that burst?
A lot of people lost their houses.
Everybody just declared bankruptcy, right?
Yep.
Everybody went under. So I read this article a couple of years ago. It really resonated with me. It's written by Mark Cuban.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you know who, like Mark Cuban, the owner of the Mavericks and tons of businesses. He's an Indiana guy. I love him. He went to Indiana University. So he said that there's a college bubble right now, that all these people are doing more and more college, and crap, there's no jobs. Well, let me get more education. And you have this growing bubble of people with $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 of debt.
Yeah.
Well, what happens when there's no job for them? Or what happens when those loans come due and their job doesn't pay them enough? Well, they're all going to default on them, and they're all going to default on them all at once. And we're going to see a big crash from that. I think that college, and I know Cuban agrees on this point, I think that college is a great chance to mature. It is a great chance or opportunity to party and have fun. I know that because that's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to go to college for an actual education, you are, and I say this with a lot of, we were talking about lynda.com a couple minutes ago.
Yeah.
How much does lynda.com cost?
$25 a month.
You mean to tell me that in 4 years, $25 a month for 4 years, with the growth that website is going to see, that I'd be better off going to college in terms of education? You're lying to yourself. You're absolutely lying to yourself. I think that we are going to see a very hard push from powers that be, whether it be, and I know I sound like I got my freaking tinfoil hat on, but like we're going to see a very hard push from the powers that be to get more kids in college. And I don't mean to sound weird, but I know this firsthand, that when you take out, because I went to a small private school, when you have a lot more loans, you need that job. You need to work that job you hate to pay back those loans. And in order to keep the system going, like, we need people to be in debt, and we need them to work these jobs. And I don't think that makes people happy, man. And I care about these kids so much, and I want them to be happy. I don't want them to live for the weekends and live for that week a year where they get to take a vacation and then hate their lives until they're 60 or 70, and then they're freaking diabetic and they can't even enjoy their retirement, if they can even retire. I just don't think that's what, is intended for us. And I think that teaching kids to be entrepreneurial gives them a choice. Entrepreneurship is not for everybody. Believe me, it sucks. It's really hard. But having a side business and having a little more leverage in your life, that is for everybody. Where if you don't like your job, you have the option of like floating a little bit until you get another one you do like. Or you can pay back those loans a little quicker so that you don't have to work a job you hate just to pay those things back. So I guess to kind of take this full circle, college frustrates me because it is not designed, at least like let's talk about teachers, for instance, because it's something we're both familiar with. College training for teachers is a freaking joke as far as the real hard skills they need to be successful teaching in a school. And I think that they vastly let me take that all back. College is not a waste of time. College is just overpriced.
Right.
I think that's a much more fair assessment.
I think that you're right, because I think we can both find examples of areas where, college has enabled people to make connections and relate to people in different ways and learn different things. So, an important time in our lives, sure, but definitely overpriced.
Thank you so much for downloading and listening to this podcast. Please subscribe in iTunes or Stitcher, and please feel free to give us a rating on Stitcher Radio or on iTunes so that we can help spread the word about how much we're learning in this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. You can find me on Twitter at Jethro Jones.